Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weirdly Cosmic Podcasts. I am Louise Eddington, astrologer and writer and shamanic practitioner. And I just want a couple of things before I dive in. Firstly, if you're watching on YouTube, please go subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and hit that little bell to get notified when I upload new videos. I'm doing a lot of fun Tea with Louise interviews, and also, YouTube loves these things for its algorithm, so it would help me a real big lot if you would subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Also, before we dive in, I will be taking a break soon from a pause from consultation bookings. I have some big projects I need to work on, including starting writing my fourth book, and I just need to open up some space in my calendar. So if you've been thinking about getting a consultation, now would be a good time to go to my website, louiseeddington.com, LouiseEddington.com, and book yourself a session with me and get yourself on my schedule before I take it off my website for a while. Okay, so today I am recording this on October the 8th, which is the day that Pluto is stationing direct, and Pluto is now direct, I believe. Yes, it was a little while ago. So far in October, we've had Mercury station direct on October the 2nd, Vesta station direct on October the 5th. Now Pluto is stationing direct. On October the 14th, Centaur Chronically stations direct, and will be moving back towards the South Node of the USA. And Pluto is moving back to another exact Pluto return conjunction in the US chart. And before the eclipse, Juno, asteroid Juno, will also station direct on October the 23rd. So things are moving forward now. Incidentally, my lovely assistant Megan, support angel, is now doing a transcript of these calls. If you want to read a transcript, there's a downloadable PDF. She's also editing the closed caption to have it make sense. She's doing an amazing job. I don't know what I ever did without her. But this eclipse, we are entering eclipse season. So today we are talking about the partial solar eclipse that's going to be on October the 25th, 2022. So we're going to take a look at that in a moment. First of all, though, I just want to say, with all these planets moving direct and asteroids and centaurs, that things are really starting to speed up. Things are starting to move forward. Saturn also stations direct, by the way, on early on October the 25th in most parts of the world, late on the 22nd here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stationing direct in October, hurtling us into eclipse season, where we're going to have 2 eclipses, a solar on October the 25th and a full moon on the US election day, November the 8th, a full moon eclipse. But before I look at the astrology, I did pull some cards. The new moon, the solar eclipse, is going to be at 2 Scorpio. It's going to take place on October the 25th, just 3 days after the first Venus Starpoint since 1879. That's the Starpoint is where the Sun and Venus are exactly conjunct. This is the superior star point, where Venus is actually on the other side of the Sun from our perspective. So she's invisible on the other side of the Sun. And this Libra star point, we are entering a Libra star point period for over 100 years. And that's really interesting because the 2 cards that I pulled for this eclipse are, first, This is the Justice card in some decks. This is the Libra card. This is Adjustment in the Thoth Tarot. You can see the scales. This is about making adjustments to come into as much balance as possible. And we all know that balance is really hard. So it's kind of balance, mediation, justice, adjustments, making a little bit over here and a little bit over here. This is what Libra does. It's not being perfectly balanced all the time. Libra is constantly seeking balance and seeking justice. So I first pulled that for this new moon. So how interesting that it's right after 3 days after the first Libra star point for 110 years, I think the last one will be, all our lifetimes. And then the second card I pulled was Jupiter in Libra, which was truce. And you can see the four swords, four of swords, the four swords coming to center, piercing the lily, this cutting out the noise and static of that background. And this is Jupiter in Libra. So these cards give me big hope, and the astrology does moving forward, to be quite honest. So let's look at the chart and move into the astrology. I couldn't believe I pulled 2 Libra cards. I was like, really? That's amazing. Okay, so here's the chart. We'll have a quick look at the chart, then I'll talk about it all. So, as I said, this is October the 25th, 2022. This is 7, 8, and 6, 40. This is a 5-day. So a 14-5 day. It's going to bring major change. I am actually a 14-5 myself, so I know that it's a very mutable, changeable number. It's also the number of the media and news and so on. So that's going to be interesting. The other thing I notice is that the eclipse is at exactly 2 degrees Scorpio, no minutes, 0 minutes, conjunct Venus at 2 degrees. Okay, and this is 222, and we are in a 222 year. So I'll talk about the numbers in a minute too. We also have a lot of other 2s in this chart. Ignore the houses because this is set for where I live, but we're everywhere. Every location will be different. So we have Mercury at 22 as well, which is 2s. We have Juno at, Pallas Athena at 20 degrees, so another 2. So we have a lot of 2s. Then we also have Mars out. He went out of bounds, which means he's acting out of his nature. He's in wild card kind of energy. Mars in Gemini being very much about kind of rash words, changing minds, very quick thinking, but often needs to backtrack. Now, Mars went out of bounds on October the 22nd, which was the day of the Libra star point. And he's going to be out of bounds for the whole of his retrograde. He's at his station retrograde degree. He will turn retrograde on October the 30th at 25 degrees of Gemini, just a few minutes after this. So Mars is really powerful in this chart too. And Mars is at 25 on this day, which is the same as the 25th and the 7. So we might look at the number 7 as well as the number 2. The other thing I do notice about this eclipse is that it's a south node eclipse. So even though it's a new moon eclipse, and eclipses are resets and new moons are new beginnings, this is a south node new moon eclipse. And that means something is being left behind to start the new things. So this is kind of an ending as well. It's not just pulling us to something which would be a north node eclipse. This is going to be leave something behind in a big way. The only real major aspect to this eclipse that's at 2 degrees, other than a conjunction with Venus, of course, which I will talk about, is a quincunx to Jupiter in Aries. And to go back to the two cards that we had, Aries is the polarity sign of Libra, and quincunx is an aspect of adjustment. So we're making adjustments to the big needs of Aries, of moving forward, of pioneering, alongside what we need to release and purge in Scorpio, because Scorpio is very purging energy. I think that's all I want to talk about, other than to say that's a 25/7. We also have Juno at 7, and she's just stationed direct 2 days before too. And that's our interconnectedness with the collective unconscious, and with all that is, and with God, mystery, whatever you want to call it. So that's interesting too. But if you just want to, you know, as I mentioned, at one point we had everything on this side of the chart was red, it was retrograde. Now we've still got Sedna retrograde, we've still got Uranus retrograde, the nodes are always retrograde. We've still got Eris and Chiron and Jupiter and Neptune retrograde. Jupiter's about to retrograde back into Pisces, which is the sign he rules. But now we have Pluto, Saturn, Vesta, and Juno all direct, along with Mercury over on this side of the chart. So things are definitely shifting and moving, and these eclipses are going to be big, big shifts and big moves. All right. So the number 2 is the number of the divine feminine. 1 is the divine masculine, 2 is the divine feminine. 2 relates to, excuse me, the moon and the high priestess tarot cards, because you can see it's very feminine, very emotional, so on and so forth. Attributes of the number 2, the positive attributes are that it's the diplomat, the artist, the peacemaker. 2 is gentle and kind and charming. 2 is sensitive, insightful, and a team player. Spiritual, unselfish, harmonious. You get the idea. They're all very yin kind of energies. So, and 2 is kind of a curvy number. The more feminine numbers always tend to have more of a curve to them. Okay. Now, you know, we've always got a downside. The 2 can be quite fearful, quite pessimistic, quite indecisive and hesitant, and a little, you know, a little bit kind of just moving into the shadow of kind of the fearfulness kind of energy. All right. So that's the 2s, and we've got so many 2s on this day. So, but do really think of it as feminine and relating to water signs, particularly the sign of Cancer, which the moon rules. So this being a new moon solar eclipse, which means the moon and the sun together, the 2 kind of symbolizes the moon in this as well. And 2 is also duality, so it's all the things of, you know, 2 1s coming together as a 2. So we've got this kind of energy going on as well in this. Now I said I might look at 7 as well, because it's actually kind of a 7-day. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to get up my notes for that. There we go. And 7 is the magical vibration, the number of the occultist and the esoteric. Okay, 7 resonates with the energies of the collective consciousness, faith, spirituality, spiritual awakening and awareness, psychic abilities, mysticism, intuition, and inner knowing. So this new moon is deeply, deeply intuitive and deeply, deeply feminine. Scorpio itself is a water sign and is a yin sign. I have started to use the traditional rulerships of this of the signs. I'm beginning to realize, and I am myself had a consultation with the great astrologer Robert Hand this week as I record this, and he was talking about this. He said, you know, of course, these outer planets, Pluto and Neptune and Uranus and so on, of course, they're important, but they more have affinity with rather than rulership. And I say this because I'm going to say that Mars is the ruler of this new moon. So here we have this new moon at 2 degrees, which is this deeply divine feminine number. On the new moon, we have the moon and sun exactly together at 2 degrees, and Venus, which is the goddess of love, the goddess of our values, or the planet of our values, love, relationships, what we value, all this kind of thing. And this is ruled by Mars, who has gone out of bounds and is going to go retrograde 3 days after this new moon. So it's a very Martian new moon in many ways. But then Venus is also conjunct the new moon, but she's still in her underworld journey. So this, to my mind, makes this new moon solar eclipse a little bit aggressive. Scorpio, in some ways, can be about leaving power dynamics and so on and so forth. It's also, Scorpio is very much about sexual politics, you know, meaning like the abortion rights, women's sexual health, all sexual health, really, to be quite honest. But in a feminine sign, we can see that the abortion issue and women's birth control and things is really up, especially in the US. But this is also a South Node eclipse. And for these eclipses, the nodes are at 13 degrees, which is the number of the witch or the goddess also, and is one of Venus's numbers because it's in the Fibonacci sequence. Okay, Venus cycles really work with the Fibonacci sequence. So here we have this very, very powerful Scorpio energy, but it's on that South Node. And we are really purging something. Mars rules that South Node, rules the eclipse, rules Scorpio. And Mars is acting out of character and is about to go retrograde in Gemini, the sign of also a relational sign. It's the Lover's card in the tarot, Gemini. It's about perceptions and community and so on. And Mars ruling that eclipse is about to revisit some things. And there's going to be some new alliances in this Mars retrograde period through Gemini. Now, Mars in Gemini in this eclipse is actually in a trine aspect to Mercury in Libra, who's at another 22 degree, another 2's number. And that and Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. So, you know, Mars and Mercury are working together to say there's going to be something big in the news around this eclipse period, I think. Something that's going to change perceptions, something that's going to change direction, something that's going to be how we think about our communities. And with Mars being out of bounds too, that means he's kind of extra loud. When planets are retrograde, they're also closer to the Earth. So that we've got that happening also. So this eclipse is likely to be a little bit shocking in some ways, and it is going to lead to a full moon eclipse on the election day in the US, November the 8th, where the moon is exactly conjunct Uranus, the lord of lightning bolts and surprises, and that's a north node eclipse in Taurus. Now, this Scorpio Taurus axis and Venus as well, which is conjunct the eclipse, is definitely about security, finances, material wealth and world, and what we're clinging on to. I think this eclipse period is going to be a very rocky period financially, as if we couldn't predict that anyway. Because there's so much here to do with power dynamics and money and values going on, that I think this Mars trying to Mercury, and Mercury incidentally being in a Venus ruled sign, with Venus conjunct the eclipse, is a balancing. We're going to be reaching a balancing out of energies. So, well, that's going to be interesting to see what that's bringing. A balancing, can sometimes mean giving up something or releasing something or purging something, which is very Scorpio Scorpio eclipse. Now, I just want to share the chart one more time quickly, because I do want to show you a pattern that we have in this. I mentioned that Mars is trying to Mercury. Well, if in actual fact, Mars and Mercury are making an air grand trine to Saturn and Vesta, with Saturn just having stationed direct, there's going to be a lot of news swirling around. But not only does it make an air grand trine, it also makes a kite aspect to Eris. Eris in Aries, the revealer of artifice, the puller down of white picket fences. I have a feeling, with Mars being out of bounds in that air grand trine and Saturn pretty well stationed, because he only turned direct 3 days before, and Vesta being kind of the hearth of the nation, or the flame of the nation that keeps it going. There's going to be some real disruption around the globe, with some real revelations about corruption and artifice and fakery and perhaps fake news and so on. It's going to be a really, really interesting time. Okay. And not only that, Pluto has been assigned by modern astrologers rulership of Scorpio. So we've just had Pluto stationing direct today, as I record this, at 26 degrees. He's barely moved. He's only moved 4 minutes by the time of the first eclipse, and that's hitting the Pluto of the USA. So it's going to be quite an interesting time, to be quite honest. But for you emotionally, let's stop the share and just talk about it. There'll be a lot of ideas swirling around, but this also with a South Node eclipse in Scorpio, it might be the time to have a good clear out. Perhaps sell some things on eBay, or one of those sites where you can sell clothing and shoes and things, Poshmark and stuff like that, to kind of recycle some of your belongings and purge a little bit, have a good clear out to help you weather any financial crises that might be coming. And it might be a really good time to really dig in, and also to see what you really need, what really are your needs for sustainability, which is the opposite point of Scorpio, which is saying, think differently, and think what you really need to have a sustainable life moving through all this period. because it is challenging. It's a very challenging period. We actually have Chiron at 13 degrees Aries, in a quincunx to the South Node in Scorpio. So that's yet another adjustment to be made, as well as the quincunx from the actual new moon eclipse itself to Jupiter. So there's some big adjustments between what I want, which can be very Aries. I'm going after what I want and creating it and taking action. To, okay, you know, maybe you want, but maybe you can't have, and maybe you have to accept that you can't always have everything that you want. And I'm not just talking about things, I'm talking about this in all areas of your life. But I will say, you know, with all the action around it, with Saturn stationing direct just before, Mars stationing retrograde just after the eclipse, Mars being out of bounds, there's a real kind of out of control feeling to this eclipse. So, you know, don't be surprised if there's some real surprises. Expect the unexpected. Eclipses are kind of wild cards on in their own right, and this is a particularly powerful one. They'll be with Venus being conjunct the new node, as I said, with being conjunct the eclipse. I swear my tongue doesn't work very well since I had COVID 3 months ago, but it's getting there. With Venus being almost exactly conjunct the new moon eclipse, there's going to be some big shifts in values, relationships, love, money, things that you own, things that you value, what you value, who you value, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a big change, big shift, big reset. Eclipses are basically major reset. So let's have a look at the, and incidentally, by the way, if you're listening to this early on after I record it, or even any time, really coming up to it, I mentioned the Venus Starpoint that's also on October the 22nd, 3 days before this eclipse. I'm doing a whole interview with Ariel Gutman, who wrote the book on the Venus Starpoint and in whose work I am certified. And she is coming on my podcast to talk about this new Starpoint, because it's going to bring a whole new shift in our energy over the next 100 years, and it's interesting what it could bring. And again, as I said, it's interesting that I got 2 Libra cards. Libra is about relationships as well, and alliances. So I think there could be a whole shifting of alliances globally with this Venus star point. And we're moving from Mars-ruled star points. We've had the Scorpio star point for over 100 years. We've got one more Scorpio star point to come before that star point is really done. That's in 4 years' time. And that is actually conjunct the eclipse degree. It's going to be at 0 Scorpio, so only so you can kind of see where Mars is almost like complaining with this station retrograde in Gemini. He's like, you mean I've got to change? I've kind of ruled the skies for over 100 years, and now you're saying I've got to release and let go and change how I work and how I act. And now in Gemini, with that being about conversations as well, and also about communication to how we talk to each other overall. I do wonder if we're going to move into a period of more diplomatic peace and able to talk things out, rather than the more Martian fighting kind of energy, because Mars, after all, is also a defender. He was the defender of of agriculture and so on, the guardian of agriculture. So perhaps Mars is going to go through his retrograde and come out the other end and say, hey, I'm going to be more of a defender and more able to talk to people rather than just go into fight mode right away. All right, so let's look at the symbols. The symbols, I have to say, even though it's kind of crazy, this eclipse, and very wild cardy, and things might be quite shocking, and you may have to purge some things and release some things you're clinging on to with hard with your fingernails, kind of thing, like, whoa. I do think the outcome is going to be good, and the symbols are quite wonderful. So the Sabian symbol for the eclipse, Scorpio 3, is a house raising party in a small village enlists the neighbors' cooperation. The feeling of community demonstrated in a basic joint effort. In rural neighborhoods, especially as the American West was being developed, the building of at least the framework of a house was often a collective, friendly enterprise. Newcomers building their home to be found friendly helpers in their neighbors. The sense of togetherness and participation in a common enterprise was developed by such collective work. The home remains our home, yet the whole community is involved in its erection and the welcome marking its completion. So the key word to this symbol is cooperation. So that's kind of speaking to what I just finished with when I was talking about the astrology. I kind of feel like this eclipse is Scorpio is very much about power dynamics, and as I said, it's a south node eclipse, so we have to give up some of this tendency to want to cling onto power and things and move into a more cooperative way of being. So I find perhaps that can be in farming, coming together to do community farms. It can mean politically, it can mean in neighborhoods, it can mean in all kinds of ways. So it's got potential and promise in very big ways, I think, this eclipse. Now let's look at the Chandra symbol for this new moon eclipse. And before I read it, I just want to remind you to subscribe and remind you to get your readings booked at louiseeddington.com. The link is in the show notes, because if you don't, you might miss out for quite a while, because I'm going to be not taking any more bookings for a while. So Scorpio 3, the Chandra symbol, is pigs being fed. Feast or famine, generating a world with an on or off switch. By pressing the off switch habitually, none of your deeper needs or desires are being met, and you resent this with an internal grumble that eats away at your substance. The on switch, pressed in emergencies when you have nothing left, pulls in a very full response to what you crave. Suddenly, everybody and everything are there, filling you up with the goodies. Yet as soon as you have had your fill, you starve yourself down to spiritual emaciation. Denying yourself everything is a karmic pattern that you are chronically hooked on. Granting yourself brief reprieves from this ancient sentence is the only way to blow off steam and survive for another round. However, you do acquire a taste for the plus state to come, realizing that if you can release the past, South Node eclipse, everyone else is willing, and all signs are forward as soon as you let up stinging yourself for past misdeeds and come afresh to life, hungry and willing. I just and again, I will copy this one in the show notes. But the Scorpio Taurus axis, and this one is again that releasing. So releasing some of those karmic patterns of Scorpios, like, oh, I've I'm obsessed. I've got to fill all my needs and my desires so fast. Whereas the North Node is in Taurus, which is a more calm, sustainable, really being grateful for what you have, and enjoying what you have. Rather, Taurus is not a material sign in the way it's sometimes presented. It is not a hoarding sign, really, although it can be in its extreme shadow. Most Taurus really just loves their home comforts and loves what they have, and has things that fill all their needs. Okay, the sustainable part. So I'm going to read this again. Pigs being fed, feast or famine, generating a world with an on or off switch. By pressing the off switch habitually, none of your deeper needs or desires are being met, and you resent this with an internal grumble that eats away at your substance. The on switch pressed in emergencies when you have nothing left calls in a very full response to what you crave. And the North Node is what we are yearning for, what we are craving, and that is sustainability based on our survival needs and values. Suddenly, everybody and everything are there, filling you up with the goodies. Yet as soon as you've had your fill, you starve yourself down to spiritual emaciation. Denying yourself everything is a karmic pattern that you are chronically hooked on. Granting yourself brief reprieves from this ancient sentence is the only way to blow off steam and survive another round. However, you do acquire a taste for the plus state to come, survival. Realizing that if you can release the past, everyone is willing, and all signs are forward as soon as you let up stinging yourself for past misdeeds and come afresh to life, hungry and willing. Now, I just want to quickly tell you what John Sandbach says about this degree, because he is the person that channeled the Chandra symbols. I actually read the interpretation that was done by Elias Lonsdale, who John Sandbach, he likes Elias's interpretations, but John Sandbach was the actual person that channeled the Chandra symbols. So he says, we associate pigs with gluttony and overeating. The symbol does not say how much the pigs are being fed. Are they being stuffed with as much food as they can possibly hold? Or are they being fed a healthy amount? Scorpio is the sign of desire and often overeating. And overeating is often an attempt to fulfill oneself when one has been starved or denied in other areas. At its best, this degree revels in what is taken in, be it love, a beautiful painting, a sunset, or a bowl of macaroni and cheese. If, though, it is not in deep and sincere touch with its true desires, it may binge chronically in an attempt to get something it never quite gets. I'll leave you with that. And I will leave you by saying happy eclipse season. It's going to be a big one. Don't forget to subscribe and be one of the first to get notified when I record the full moon eclipse edition, which is going to be on the midterm elections in the USA. So I might have a little look at the USA chart with this as well. Oh, I did want to say one more thing. I'm not going to look at the charts, but I do want to say this eclipse season is going to be really relevant to the Ukraine conflict, because the new moon eclipse that we're looking at now is right on the ascendant of Putin, if his chart is correct, because we're not sure it is. And the full moon eclipse on November the 8th is right on Zelensky's 6th house Uranus. So either way, there's going to be a big change of fortunes, because with eclipses being wild cards, you can't always tell which way it's going to go. I will say, though, that the new moon eclipse On the 25th is a South Node eclipse on Putin's ascendant, releasing something. So maybe eclipse effects unfold over about 6 months. Maybe he'll be releasing his presence in the public stage, we can hope. But the full moon eclipse is a North Node eclipse on Zelensky's 6th house Uranus. Now the 6th house has a few symbols. It has health, so he could have some changes in his health, but it's also about service and how we serve. And so a North Node eclipse, he may kind of have that Promethean impulse to really jump in and serve. Might take a quick look at his chart as well and do a separate video on those. But I just wanted to mention that the eclipses are really affecting the two charts of these two leaders, and it's going to bring big changes. So watch this space. And for now, I'm Louise Eddington, astrologer. You can find me at louiseeddington.com and get those consultations booked.